We've got some.
Hey, I'm Luis.
And I'm Luis.
And you're listening to the Content is Profit podcast.
We spent the last 4 years learning the strategies and techniques from some of the top marketers in the world on how to create content that turns into profit. And today, we're bringing them to you so you can take action immediately and start creating real content momentum.
If you'd like to learn more about how to turn your content into profit, go to contentisprofit.com. Oh, yeah. So you know when you go to a party and you see a person, and then you go to a different party and you see them again, and then you go to a coffee shop and that person is there again, but you never interact. Well, this is exactly how we felt with today's guest. We kept seeing him on social with people that we admire, on shows we love, but we never got the chance to connect. This one is on us.
So we decided to take action, and you guessed it, we reached out. After listening to one of his live videos, we immediately resonated with the way he was sharing his story around chaos and his message. He was incredibly vulnerable, which is not an easy thing to do. And the way he delivers stories was like eating Reese's peanut butter cups. Not incredible.
What?
The Reese's, the stories were incredible. The Reese's peanut butter are not incredible. You can tell my brother wrote this intro.
Definitely. He helps.
Team Twix.
Wow. Okay. Side note. He helps entrepreneurs create a state of sovereign action. We all know we need this. Yes, I'm admitting it. He has blessed to have multiple business He was blessed to help multiple businesses scale in 7 figures while staying present and available to his beautiful family. And he's currently helping business owners and founders take control of their lives, businesses, and relationships.
I love it. I love it. And I feel like today's guest, he has this air of like stoic philosopher. I can't wait to begin.
Yes.
This is going to be an epic ride. Please welcome incredible coach, the creator of Pulse Advantage, and proud family man, Paul Van Bloem. I hope we're not.
Hey, thanks, guys. That was awesome. I love it. I know you probably get this all the time. But that was one of the greatest intros I've ever had. So,
Thank you, Paul. By the way, we butchered that like 40 times because Fonzie did not read the script the way that we were supposed to read it. Just saying.
He is putting peanut butter jokes in there. Hey, nobody likes Reese's. Like, who? Well, do you like Reese's?
Well, hey, if that was you butchering it, I think you did great. I can't imagine what a flawless intro would look like.
You're being too nice, Paul. And here, for the audience and for yourself too, how do we properly pronounce your last name? I feel like we might have got it wrong.
Right. So Van as in like the car, Bloom as in like flowers blooming, right?
Oh, okay.
I know it sounds like Bloem. Kids used to call me Bam Boom and make fun of me, but we're over it.
Okay, I think we got it pretty close. I think it was pretty close.
I think we did.
Good job.
Dude, Paul, I just want to say thank you so much for coming to the show and accepting our invite. The way that I described it is like I literally saw you everywhere, like with the people that we work with the people that we admire, with the shows that we love, and I was like, man, like, who's this guy? And then all of a sudden I see your video and your message, and I'm resonating, and I put it like in the background as I was driving to the studio, and it got me thinking, man, like a lot of people need to hear this message from you because we were there where it was a very hard time when we started to publish. Like we didn't know what to say, how to be vulnerable, right? And I think that's something that comes with time and practice. So I was like, man, I need to reach out to him and see what's up and get to know him, and what a better way to bring him to the show. So I just want to say thank you. And with that, I would love for you to share a little bit of your story, right? Who's Paul? How do you started in the entrepreneurial world and with your family? What are you currently doing? And then go from there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my journey is probably similar to a lot of entrepreneurs' journey. I started out in the corporate world and just hated my life. And so I said, well, I got to figure a way out of this. And really, and like a lot of other entrepreneurs as well, I had, like this, you kind of feel a little bit arrogant when you say this, especially like in the early days when you're like trying to start out, where you're like, I know I'm smarter than like most of the people in this room, and I don't know why I'm working for them, and I don't think that like, well, anyway, we can get back to that later. I was going to say, I don't think that that's like necessarily true. I think that almost everybody can go out and produce their own things. But I think that there's something inside of entrepreneurs that is willing to take the risk and willing to take ownership. But we can get into that later. So yeah, I like literally in the course of like a week decided, you know what, I'm going to go and start my own thing. I quit my job and started just, I actually started out as a videographer, producing videos for people. And I slowly started getting into the business world, creating ads and things like that. And was so blessed to be able to work with Catherine Jones. We were actually really good friends in the corporate job that I was talking about. And so we started working together and really quickly scaled our business to 7 figures. And at that point, I started like looking around at the people in my life and the other entrepreneurs that I was connecting with, and being like, I can help these people. And I was seeing a lot of the issues that they were struggling with. I had to spend a lot of pain and effort in figuring out how to cope with myself. And so, yeah, I started taking on some private clients, and now it's really quickly scaled, and I've been able to work with some really awesome people, and like bless them to or be blessed to work with them and help them, you know, step into this place of control and power and action taking, and it's been awesome.
Wow, that's amazing. I love it. I love especially the part that you said, that feeling that you had inside about, I am like smarter than these people. And I definitely can see how like that can sound conceited, I think is the word. But, you know, I feel most people feel that at one point. They look around and they realize something is not right clicking in there. It's like you are not where you're supposed to be. And I wrote down here kind of as a thought, like, what do you think that is? Like, do you think that is the moment when we finally perceive our potential, right? It's like, wow, you know, maybe we ran across certain situation, you know, certain piece of information that made us think in a different way. And now we're, you know, kind of like looking inward and asking ourselves, is this the right place for me? Because now I can see my potential. I think I can, you know, in your honor, bloom in a better way, to put it in those terms. So I'm curious, do you think it is that?
Yeah. So I actually think that I think intelligence is like a factor. Like I'm not a denier saying that like there is not a variability in intelligence. Like absolutely there is. But I think that the major factor, I think that 95% of people are capable of creating a really powerful and like beautiful life. But I think that there is a separator, like when in a corporate space, if you're in a position where most people are making around, you know, like 70 to 150, right? Most of those people are intelligent or intelligent enough, right? Yep. But I think the true separator between people who are capable of building like a really beautiful life and the people that don't end up doing that is, is sovereignty. Not to like be all like gimmicky and markety, but like genuinely, I actually believe that I think it's more of an emotional intelligence than it is an actual like IQ intelligence. And your ability to recognize, when am I out of alignment with or not oriented towards my greatest potential? When am I making decisions from a place that's reactive, that's pre-programmed, that's ego-driven, instead of like actually making the right decision? Like I think if we can just shift that one thing, so many other things started. Like it's the big domino, I believe, that knocks over a lot of things.
Yeah.
I don't know if I quite answered your question. I think yours is more oriented towards like realizing your own potential. Is that right?
But I love your answer, right? Because I do agree, honestly, 100% with the difference between building a beautiful life and not having that beautiful life. Is kind of like that ownership, right? We have talked about it in the show before, that internal or external locus of control, right? Where a lot of people just decide to place blame outside on things that they don't control, therefore giving away their power, right? And I'm going to be honest, before the show, I've heard about the word and I'm gonna butcher this. It's a very difficult word to pronounce for us Hispanics over here. But I heard about sovereignty.
Sovereignty. Yeah.
Sovereignty. Wow.
You're good. You're good.
So I heard about the word, but I've always heard it in the political aspect.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I feel like most people are used to the word like that. So I was like, let me look the definition of words. Right. Lately, I've been interested in finding the definition of words to see how they can fit a context.
A man of my own soul.
Nice. And yours says supreme power or authority, right? And that got me thinking. I was like, wow, I really like this term because it is you yourself have supreme authority and power over yourself. Mm-hmm. Yet I don't think most people realize that. I think most people are, hypothetically speaking, in shackles, like being controlled by what other people think of them. And we're just giving those powers away. So I'm curious on how do you get to the sovereignty.
Sovereignty.
Sovereignty. You appreciate it.
So how do you arrive at sovereignty, or like how did I discover that?
So let's go with how did you discover it in yourself at first?
Okay, yeah.
Journey in there.
Whew, there's a lot of stories in there, and honestly, I think that arriving to that place is a constant journey. We live in a world that is it's so easy to give away your sovereignty. It's so easy to just let somebody else make the decisions for you. It feels so good to just be like, I'm just not gonna. And so I don't think that's like fully realized. I think I've learned a lot of principles that will help me recheck back into that place. Yeah. But I think there was one, and you probably actually heard me tell the story, Luis, but there was one particular moment that sticks out to me where, let me give a little bit of context. When I was 12, my dad passed away, and I didn't have a father figure in my life for a really long time. Well, ever, right? Since I was 12. But during that time of like 12 to like 25, I didn't really realize what was happening in myself internally, but I was really resentful that I didn't have that figure in my life. And I was searching for this mentor to come along and rescue me and teach me how to be a man and like teach me how to deal with the world and figure out what is money and how do I talk to a girl and how do I like fix my flat tire, and I didn't realize how resentful I was. But I knew that I was like just pissed off at life and trying to figure out like why and how do I fix this? And there came this moment in like my mid-20s where I had a mentor. I found a mentor that I trusted, and I was telling them about my angst with life, and they called me out and they were like, "Paul, you're being a victim right now." And I was like, "Oh shoot, you're so right. Like that's exactly what I'm doing." And in that moment, it wasn't so much realizing that I could be sovereign, but it was realizing I was playing the victim. And I was allowing this story and this like event that had happened to me like a decade ago, right? Take control of the actions that I was making right now. And I finally woke up and I was like, I can't do this. Like I'm giving away my life because of like some event that happened in the past. Like, yeah, like it's sad that my dad died and I was a victim to that, but I don't need to act like a victim today. Like that victim moment happened 10 years ago, 20 or 15 years ago. I don't have to carry that burden into this moment. Like that's disempowering and it's ultimately damning. Like you lose so much of your power and your control and your joy because of a moment back then.
Yeah.
So that was the first moment where I was like, oh wow, like I don't have to be the victim anymore. Like I can be in control of this moment. I can like literally Google, how do I fix a flat tire? Like that's not hard. But I was making it so hard. I was making it like, no, like I'll never be able to fix a flat tire. And I was like, that's so stupid. That's so dumb. Like, why are you letting yourself, like, why are you ruining this moment in your life where it could be a really empowering moment? You could learn how to change a flat tire, Paul. How cool is that?
Yeah, absolutely.
I want to highlight the way. Well, first off, thank you for sharing that story. I know, like right now, like it gives us power also to share these things because the more we put it out there, the more we realize the lessons out there. So I know for a lot of people that are starting to get their message out and publish, I highly encourage to go this. And also maybe share. You probably went through a journey to be able to share this story, right? Like for us personally, we come from a country that it's a beautiful country, beautiful people, but is unfortunately in a very bad political situation, right? And we could have sat there 10 years ago and act like a victim and be like there's no way out of this. Like, why are we in this country? Like, why were we born? Like, we're so unlucky, blah, blah, blah. Like, which we've known a lot of people that have, sat there and do that instead of searching for different opportunities, right? But I also think there's a lot of people that were in that situation with us that did not take the victim sit and was like, I'm going to do something about it, right? And how crazy is this decision, right? To make that decision and leave your home country. Like, that is not an easy thing to do.
No.
So, for us personally, we wanted a different life. We always were encouraged to go chase our dreams. We played soccer for a long time. We got the opportunity to go to Europe. Like, that's a whole story on its own. But at the same time, when we came back and, the soccer dream was not there anymore, we're like, okay, what are we doing? And we thought we were going to, grow and develop our life and look for opportunities inside of our country. But because of the situation, that was not possible anymore. We didn't see it possible. We immediately took action. We're like, what's the next place where I can go, right? It's not easy to leave home. Our parents are still there, right? Like, we want to bring them with us 100%. But then scholarship opportunity came up. Well, didn't come up. We actually looked for it. We sent over 300 emails to find it and taking action, like you mentioned, right? And then we came here. But I think that came from a place where we were put in an environment where our parents encouraged that from a very early age, or we were put in an environment where the school was encouraging us to do that. Like, our school was very different to the public schools that we see here, or even the private schools that we see here. And we were always put in that environment that encouraged that thought. So I know that's not an easy thing to do, because now 10 years later, after coming here to the States, we still fight with that, or still try to be conscious about moments like that where we can be and take action and do not act like a victim. Like you said, it's very easy to fall in those places. Now, go ahead. Sorry.
Go for it.
my question to you is, like, for those that are encountering those moments, right? That, like, how do we snap out of it? Because maybe they didn't have the fortune to growing up in a home where that is encouraged, right? Like we were. How do we now snap out of it and be like, man, like, I gotta stop this? Do we need somebody to call us out and be like, dude, stop it? Like, or like, how have you seen it, like, in your journey with the people that you help with even with your coaches, right? Like, how do you see that?
Yeah, well, I do think that there is something to be said for it. I don't think that there's a one size fits all prescription to this. But I do think that there are a couple of key components. One of them, I think, is having outside feedback is super important, especially cultivating relationships that are willing to tell you, like, hey, like, get over yourself in a merciful, loving way, right? But I also think that cultivating self-awareness is extremely valuable and so important. I think that like that's why I think you see a lot of really successful people journaling, is because that's not a place to just, like, document history. Like, today I had ice cream and whatever, right? Like, that's not the purpose of journaling in my mind. The purpose of journaling is to, like, really, like, to get your internal voice onto, like, a piece of paper and then be able to reflect on it. But I think journaling is really, really important. But also, like, I'm actually, like, really bad at journaling. And so what I've actually done for myself is moments where I'm like, hey, Paul, it's time to get out of your head. I actually just do, like, voice recordings sometimes, because it's like way easier for me to just get out of my head. But cultivating those moments, like whether it's journaling, whether it's like, for me, actually, at another point in my life, I would just like go hike up into the Utah mountains into the middle of nowhere and just like talk to myself. I probably looked pretty crazy, but like the cultivating those moments where you can just like really become really self-aware and intentionally self-aware. Another practice that one of my mentors encouraged me to do was to between each activity that I do throughout the day, just pause for like 2 minutes and say, what's happening? Like, because, or like, what did I just do? How am I like feeling intellectually and emotionally, physically? What am I going to do in the next like hour or so? And then like making a decision right there, because just being aware of yourself. So many of us go through our life just like metaphorically with blinders on. It's just like task, because we're so busy and we have so much to do that it's just like we can only we feel like we're like just barely keeping our head above water, so we can't even like look at ourselves. We're like, I don't have time for these emotions. I don't have time for these thoughts. I don't have time to like take care of myself physically. And so we just like are constantly executing what other people have told us to do. We never actually end up making any decisions.
Yeah.
And so it's really tempting in those moments to be like, it's not my fault. Look, it's their fault. Right. But if we can become self-aware, it at least gives us the footing to say, oh, I am being a victim right now. Oh, like I am allowing other people to make decisions for me. But like, I think awareness is the first step. And that's what, well, that is the step, but it's like, where is it coming from? From a mentor, from yourself. I think like even just like reading other people's biographies or books, you can start to reflect back to yourself like, oh, am I making these kinds of decisions? Right.
Yeah.
So it's like awareness is the principle, but it's like, how do you cultivate awareness? There's a lot of different applications to that.
I love it. Before Fonzie asks a smart question, I want to highlight that, right? Like, because, you know, as you were describing the situation, I'm looking back at my life and at my private like experiences, right? And we've had personally, you know, my wife, I respect and love and adore. Like, she's the one that calls me out in a ton of stuff, right? I come in and I'm like, hey, babe, this just happened, or I'm feeling this way, and she's like, you know, just go ahead and do it. Like, what's so hard? Stop telling me and go and execute, right? And I'm like, oh yeah, you are right. So I think that's so important, finding that one person, right? And sometimes we tend, or at least I did when I first like met those kind of people, tend to not get them in because I feel uncomfortable having that conversation.
Oh, but it sucks.
Yes. And I'm like, no, wait. And then you're like, well, is my ego just like putting this massive wall in front of me that is, you see, the fact that they're telling me that means that they love me, right? Like, and it's like, well, thank you. And that took me a second to do that. And then what you said, and, you know, Fonzie's an avid reader. I tend to listen a lot more than read audiobook, but I think that's so important too, because then you can see, okay, that's the path that they walked. And I'm like, okay, how do I want to get there? And then you start adapting, and we don't know what we don't know, right? So I think that's a very good entry point too, to start, you know, oh man, I was thinking this way, but maybe I need to think like this to be able to execute that task or move forward or be more aware or like be present. So thank you for making that comment.
Yeah. Another thing that I just thought of, actually, this is the first time I've ever explored this thought, well, in this context, so bear with me. But I think another part that enables us to open that door of awareness, because it's really terrifying sometimes. And it's, I think maybe it kind of sounds like we're saying that you have to like, you kind of just have to stuff down your feelings and like, just like go, you know, like that's like, get over yourself, stop being a victim. That's not the powerful way to do it. Like being able to validate that happened is extremely important. And I think that opens the gate to be able to say, okay, that happened and I'm not a victim anymore, so I can move on. So we're not saying don't validate, but don't dwell. And the term that I like to use for this is this was the phrase that came to me in that moment when I was just like, oh shoot, like I need to get over myself, was, are you going to allow this moment to be a foothold or a throne? And when you erect your you erect your victimhood as a throne to sit on, and to like sanctimoniously like vault yourself above others and be like, hey, look, I'm a victim and I'm better than you. You're only succeeding because you don't have this problem that I have. Like, that's a throne. and like that damns you. But like if you use it as a foothold to like, because those moments, every victim moment, every moment where you were traumatized or hurt or whatever, right?
Yeah.
Couched in it is an opportunity to learn about the world, yourself, others, and use it as leverage to step up into a greater version of yourself. So coming back to my other thought, sorry. This, I think something that can start opening the door to this place of self-awareness is asking yourself the question, is my worthiness on the table because of this experience? Because if you are like positioning this like this scenario so that your worthiness comes into question, you won't see it. We are so like, it's so extremely important for us to feel to feel worthy, to feel valuable, that when it comes into question, the answer to, or like the scenario that you're like sussing out or trying to bring awareness to, you like your subconscious will just lock off and it'll just say, nope, we're not going there, because if this plays out wrong, we're abandoned. And I think it even goes deeper for a lot of people, even if they're not like spiritual or like not religious or whatever, there's always like this like higher power idea, whether that's God or whatever else, that bestows worthiness to us. And if we don't allow, and sometimes it can even be like past figures, like your father, what would my father think of me? Or what would whoever, my old girlfriend think of me, right? That's that authority figure that's bestowing worthiness to you. And so if you can like either position that figure to be an all merciful, always loving being, or like remove them from the equation, like that old girlfriend, then it allows you to with so much more capacity, start looking at yourself in a truly objective, powerful way.
Yeah.
So again, that was the thought that I hadn't yet sussed out. So I hope that worked.
You heard it first. In content is profit. There we go. No, I love it, man. And I think this is one of the beautiful things about creating stuff like this, that we can get our thoughts into words to the world and see what happens, right? And I think is the job that does internally too, because I'm sure like then you'll take this thought and you're like you're gonna further develop it.
Yeah,
right? To continue to share it. And thank you for allowing us to experience that.
Yeah. No, it was amazing to see and listen to you putting your thoughts into words, for sure. We could see, the thought process going on in there was amazing.
Me trying to make sure I don't say something dumb. Yeah.
We take care of that on our end. Don't worry.
You heard the intro. So
no, but genuinely though, I think like you being able to cultivate an environment where people can do that is awesome.
Yeah, appreciate
Absolutely.
it. Thank you. And like going to that, it's like we had the issue of wanting to be perfect, and I started too with videography, right? When I came into the entrepreneurial world, the digital world, I was like, actually we started like, let's go sell to this restaurant, and we sell them some pictures, social media, and eventually it's like, let's get a camera, and then I started to get into making videos and all the stuff. So when it came to publishing for yourself, I was like, no, it has to look good, the quality, the things, totally. Right? And at the end, I just realized I was just scared of putting myself out there, because we would make a mistake. Was like, delete, let's start all over again. Delete, start all over again. We actually recorded 5 episodes of this podcast about 2 years ago that we've never published because of so much friction that it had, right? And honestly, it was so many insecurities that we had to actually publish the content. So when we started again, we're like, you know what? Let's just embrace the mistakes, right?
Yeah.
Not be a victim of this thing and be like, we cannot publish because of X, Y, Z. No, we are the only ones responsible for this. So if we make mistakes, we'll just laugh about it.
We used to have sweaty pits before laughing about it, and now we don't have the sweaty pits anymore.
No, I can empathize with the sweaty pit moment for sure.
Yeah, sometimes I still get it, so it's all good, But Going a little bit back into your story. First of all, again, thank you for sharing that part of your story.
Yeah.
But I just heard actually a podcast from the founder of Morning Brew. Right, I don't remember his last name. His first name is Alex, and he was talking about how he lost his father too when he was 20, and he said that was a pivotal point in his life because that's when he thought like he said he gained like a stoic mentality in that moment of his life because he was 20. That dad was the only one taking care of the family, so now he's like everything was on my shoulders. He said from that point forward, I had the best grades of my life in
Mhm.
school. I had the job of my dreams, and then I started the company that now he's 25 years old now, and this company is valued at over $100 million. Right, it's a very big company. But he said at that point when I was saying goodbye to my dad, he's like, I realized everything was on me right now. Like it was my own personal responsibility, right? And I hear your story, and right, you lost your dad earlier as a kid, so it's very difficult, obviously, to come up with these concepts. But eventually, I feel like you managed to get there, right?
Mhm.
And
Right.
in all that space that you lived without your dad, you said you lived on why this happened to me, like that victim
Right.
mentality, right? And I remember reading once, memories bring out the emotions, right? Like emotions create memories, right? And then when you have those memories again, you just start recreating all these emotions.
Yeah.
And not to get too woo-woo over here, but when we are living based in these negative emotions, this is what we attract in our world as well, right? We're like a magnet for what we're feeling. So when we're living in a place of victimhood, right? Reliving these memories of that we don't like, we don't like experiences, right? That we, again, I'm gonna point this out, or perspective on that experience is a negative one at the moment. We are just gonna be bringing up these emotions from the past, and it's like we're literally living all these years in the past instead of being
Yeah.
present. And
Yeah.
now we're living in these negative emotions, and we're attracting everything that is negative around us. But I
Yeah.
love what you said, that your mentor told you, hey, you're a victim, right? And then
Mhm.
you're now, like you said, in a loving way. And I'm curious to know, how is a loving way to say that? Because there's a lot of people out there that I want to tell you, like, stop being a victim, right? But in a loving way.
Yeah.
But I love that because, in a sense, it kind of made you snap, like you said, brought awareness to yourself. And at the same time, it made you change the perspective of that one event that you were falling victim to. So now I'm sure that when you look back at it, you of course, like it must be painful, but at the same time, it's like, wow, everything that I learned from my dad. Now, instead of bringing these negative emotions, you might be bringing these positive emotions, and now you start attracting, literally, like changing your world around you because of what you're feeling, right? So I'm curious your thought on perspective, because
Yeah.
you mentioned it already, but it's huge because every side of the story has multiple perspectives, right, that we can take. The
Yeah.
example that we always give is when coronavirus hit, we lost like 80% of our business because we're working with brick and mortar businesses. And my brother, he panicked, right? He was like, oh no,
Yes.
because he had taken a big loan to be able to invest his time here with BizPros, right? And at that moment, I think I'm a little bit more chill in those aspects. Like I don't worry as much.
A lot more chilled.
And I was
Good balance. Good
like,
balance.
what if we change perspective?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
we wanted to get rid of those clients either way. Like we weren't enjoying working with them. But like,
Yeah.
like COVID did it for us. Now we got a lot of time and we wanted to start a podcast. Like, why don't we do something with this time that we have now, right?
Right.
And that changed your perspective, right? My brother immediately, like, he went out for a walk and he came back. He's like, okay, dude, let's do it. And that changed for us. But imagine if we would have lived in that place of victimhood of, oh, we lost our business because of COVID, blah, 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 excuse. First, we wouldn't be here talking to you today.
Right.
So I'm curious on your side on perspective. How can people work, actively on their perspective on things? And I know you mentioned the 2-minute drill to pause. I think that is great. I wrote it down because I'm like, I need to start doing that.
Mhm.
But is there any other ways how people can start working on their perspective side of things?
Yeah, well, I think something that you said is really important. You said we start creating our world based off of our perspective. And like, that is so, I can't endorse that more. Like, that is so accurate. When we, like, if you take it from like a philosophical standpoint, like, your whole experience, all of life is in here, right? You're just like you're a brain in a vat, right? And so like what you experience around you, like, is a combination of your agency or your ability to choose and the input that comes in. So it's like, if you can recognize that, it's like, well, I can choose to assign meaning to this event, and like that is the experience of it. So what do I want that meaning to be? And a lot of the work that a lot of the powerful work that we need to do in order to step into a place of sovereignty is taking these old programs and these old events and then separating them from the meaning that we've attached to them in the past and reassigning new meaning to it. Mm-hmm. And when we do that to our past, it starts setting the operating system for our current scenario.
Yeah.
So a lot of the, to answer your question, a lot of the perspective that we hold currently comes from perspective that we've derived from our past. Yep. So it's like, if you can understand what happened back here, like, what meaning did I associate to it? What meaning do I want to associate to it? That will like dramatically impact your current scenario and the way that like events come at you and the way that you react to them. Because when chaos comes into our life, when there's like, and to like define chaos, it's like more stimulus in our environment than we're capable of handling based off of our current skill sets. So like when that happens, our body goes, we need to protect ourselves. What's our old programming that we can rely on? Because there's too much happening. I don't have enough creative bandwidth to be able to deal with what's happening currently. So it's like, it's an operation system. And you just like, there's no thought going into that. There's no creativity going into that. It's just like a 12-year-old's calling the shots right now. And so we might start making a lot of really bad decisions based off of like the current environment, because a 7-year-old that had no idea what money was is making the decision, or a 15-year-old that has no idea how to interact with girls is making the decision, right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so we just start breaking stuff, which starts creating new. So we break something and our environment falls apart, and then we go, oh, look, see, validation, and we assign meaning, right? Yeah. And so we start, it's this vicious cycle of like drilling into ourselves old scripts. But what we have to do is disrupt it so that we can start assigning new meaning. But it's really hard. It's like nigh to impossible to do that amidst chaos unless you have somebody there holding your hand saying, don't worry, we're okay, look. And that's where like a therapist or a coach can help. But but what we can do is, when we do have moments where we're not in the midst of chaos, we can choose to enter the old chaos and reassign meaning and reprogram. And it's essentially, you're creating agreements and rules with yourself so that when new chaos enters, you have those rules and those agreements to fall back onto to address the new chaos that's coming in, right?
I love it. I love the part of agreement and rules. You know, we often talk, my brother loves talk about frameworks, right? Mm-hmm. I've grown into them, actually. And
it will drive me insane that he, at the very beginning, he would not follow any frameworks, and I'm like, just follow the structure. Let's see where the holes are, right?
And I think it's part of that creative process of being a videographer. That is like, what can I create from this piece of footage that I get, right? But either way, like, not these agreements and rules, they seem like frameworks for your own personal life, right?
That's exactly what they are.
Yeah. What is that framework when chaos show up? And I want to relate this to what you were talking about. We want to feel valuable, right? But sometimes looking inwards, that might challenge those beliefs about ourselves, and that's when we shut off, right? So do we look inward mainly when we are in chaos, or or like how does that happen, right? Because I'm sure there must be people that we see that are extremely successful that they journal on that stuff. They do it on a consistent basis.
Right.
But I think the moment when at least people that don't do it in a consistent basis tend to lean towards, okay, let me start looking inwards, is when chaos shows up. So then they shut down and they go to the previous operating system and all that.
Right. Yeah. So just make sure I'm understanding right. Your question is, what do you do when you're currently in chaos to like not totally break everything?
Yeah.
yeah, totally. And again, there's a lot of different applications for a lot of different scenarios, but the key, like the underpinning principle of it is like, what is the meaning that you assign to this? Or another word that you could use is, what is the story that I'm currently telling right now?
Yeah.
Because if you can start bringing awareness to the story, then you can start to recognize, oh, like this is a 7-year-old, right? This is a 7-year-old framework. So honestly, like, I think one of the most critical things that you can do is like pause and journal and say what, like literally just start writing. And for me, generally, like I can't do the whole journaling thing. Well, I can when I force myself to, but I pull out my phone and I start making a voice recording and I just start talking. Because what that does, again, it's coming back to that awareness factor. When you can start bringing awareness to what's happening, the current story that's playing out right now, then you can start disrupting it. But if you don't even know what's happening, you can't disrupt it, right?
Yeah.
Also, another question that you can ask yourself is, what would it look like for, and then fill in the blank, to happen right now? Instead of diving into the past of going like, why is this happening? Oh, blah. You can say, okay, like what would this situation look like for me to succeed in it? What would this situation look like for me to not have a fight with my wife? What would this situation look like for me to have a productive conversation with my business partner? What would this situation look like for me to reacquire 80% of my company? What would this situation look like, right? So it's like, what result do I want to have happen? What would the situation look like? Instead of saying like, the world's falling apart and everybody's going to die. And it's like, no, you just lost 80% of your business. That's not the world falling apart.
Mm-hmm.
Like, and I know, like, saying that, you might be like, yeah, but that kind of sounds like my world's falling apart. But when we can reframe it to say, okay, like, worst case scenario, let's say that like your company falls apart. Are you dead? Can you rebuild? Can a new business blossom out of this? Like, it's like you were saying, Luis, it's all about perspective. Like, what perspective do I want assigned to this? Do I want this to be a world fall apart scenario, or do I want this to be a platform or a leverage point or a foothold to move forward and to create something better? It's like it's literally all up to you. It's all up to you.
Is a saying of your life grows to because of the questions that you ask yourself. Something around those lines. I definitely butchered that one, but
Yeah.
it is true, right? Because sometimes we have that internal dialogue that is just so negative.
Yeah.
And it's a loop. Like we just keep going and going and going.
Yeah.
And it takes a while to realize. I'm curious. I know my brother wants to ask a question here, but do you fall into the victimhood mentality still sometimes?
Oh yeah. I think everybody does. I don't care how self-aware you are or how like capable you are. And here's the beautiful thing. Actually, I think it is such a blessing, honestly, because let's say you're the most self-aware, most emotionally intelligent, most successful business entrepreneur ever. You're going to, because of your capacity, you're going to have built structures that are so heavy that they start experiencing they just start experiencing problems that on a smaller level you wouldn't be experiencing. So yeah, like I might not like be like totally like thrown by a small statement that my wife says, but I might be totally thrown because I have a partner that comes to me with like a crazy ask or whatever, right? There's just you experience different problems at different levels. And so you're always having to learn how to like strengthen that, that identity, your identity and your operating systems, which I think is so beautiful because like, what would life look like if you just like plateaued, right? Like I I genuinely believe that you have to have a certain amount of chaos in your life for you to have a meaningful life, to actually experience joy. You have to have chaos.
Yeah.
Because and you can actually see this on a political spectrum as well, where we're constantly, as a society and as individuals, we're fighting against entropy. Constantly. We're fighting against this chaos. And you can either go one of two ways. You can embrace the chaos and be like, everything's great. Or you can fight so much against it that you have so much order that you damn yourself. And in either place, you're damned. Because in chaos, you have zero control. Yeah. And in this place of extreme order, you are you're damned because you're not allowing any creative innovation or anything happening in your life or in your society or in your life or whatever. And so like this, I mean, you could look at this as anarchy and like tyranny, right?
Yeah.
And we do this same exact thing on an individual level. We either act like tyrants of our identities and ourselves, or we act like anarchists. And we're like, whatever happens is great. Or we go like, no, you will not fail.
Exactly. Right? Yeah. I'm loving this conversation. I honestly did not expect it to go like on this side of things, and I absolutely love it because it ties down to a lot of things, a lot of the conversations that we've been having in communities this week. And one of the things that I realized as you were talking is the second we start identifying these concepts and understanding them, then like you said, we can create those rules and know exactly how to act depending on that situation, right? And I keep going back to my own experiences and those moments in my life where there was a very bad negative situation at the moment that I thought it was like really negative. And then I moved on from there. I don't think I did the exercise of assigning the new meaning to that or like the meaning to it because I was like maybe too close to it or I didn't know what I didn't know, right? But then I completely turned around, new perspective, move forward. And then I looked back and I'm like, because of that moment, I'm standing here, right? Like, and, we can go through some crazy stories. Like one of them is like, when I was 15, I was in Italy playing soccer. Like that's the dream. Like the dream, you are a soccer athlete and you're in Europe playing soccer at 15. That's the dream. And then came back home for a summer break. And then when I was about to go back again, the Italian government denied my visa. It was like, you can't come in. You're underage. There's no family around. And I was like, what is this? Like they're crushing my dream, blah, blah, blah. Right. And then that caused a moment where like I stayed home, graduated with my whole class that I went to school with from like second grade on, like my family, right? Which was a beautiful moment, right? Like that was one of the things. And I appreciate that moment because it's near to my heart. And then it got me the opportunity to go to Spain the next year, right? So those are the things how it evolved. Also back home, this is a story that we don't share often here, but through the entire political situation, the whole country is in a very unsafe situation. And I got kidnapped. A lot of my friends got kidnapped. And this is a story that we don't share too often, right? And it was a very painful like week, like right after that. It's like, why is this happening? But that experience alone caused the spark that I was like, I need to get out, look for new opportunities. I cannot continue to live this way if I want to achieve XYZ, right? And that's what caused for us, both of us, to send over 600 emails to every single soccer coach in D1, D2, D3 to make it happen. Guess how many answers we got? 2, right? Like I got one, Fonzie got another one, like right. But that was the igniter that brought us here. So now we're thankful for those opportunities. Thank God we didn't go to worst. But I think those are the things that we need to look back and like you said, like that operating system. Now that we know, that things happen for a reason. Well, let's stop. Right now we have the advantage of acting immediately, where it's like, okay, let's stop. I know that this happened for XYZ reason. Like, what is the new meaning that I'm going to assign to this? What is like my new north? Like, where am I going? So now chaos, I'm seeing it as an indicator, right? Like we talked about this in the past, failures or samples, right? How we call them are indicators that we are going in the right path, right? And then if we add chaos to that, we're like, oh, sweet. That's an indicator that maybe I'm not leveling up to the speed of like everything else. So what is the action I need to take to level up and then control that chaos or keep it at least a little bit contained so I can execute without going crazy. So I absolutely adore this because not only on the private life or the business life. Those are things that we can apply in any way. And also when we start publishing, like people like facing the fears on their business and trying to share their message and their voice, there's a lot of chaos that can come from that, from like, what tech do I use, or like overthinking it, or
Yeah.
like internally, like, and these are things that we can apply in our day to day if we want to make sure that our message gets out there. So thank you, Paul. I really, really appreciate everything that you've shared today. It's been incredible. This is another one for the, to repeat. So if you're listening right now, save it, repeat it again tomorrow, and repeat it again next month, and so on. Just keep it there for reference.
Yeah, definitely. But I love all your concepts, and I love that spectrum between chaos and order. How the end of the spectrum is not good, right? Like you need to live pushing a little bit on those limits in there, but not settle for neither. There's not benefit in like just standing there still, right?
Mhm.
And I'm curious, like how do you went from I'm a videographer and helping, incredible people like Catherine Jones with their brand and all that stuff,
Yeah.
to now I want to help people see this, right? I want people to understand their own potential, understand that they can actually lean into chaos and build a better life for themselves.
Yeah. Yeah. You know what? I actually think it was always there. I'm remembering when I was first when we first got married, me and my wife, we were sitting on our parents' lawn, and we were talking about like, what's our life going to look like? And we were like dreaming, right? And it was this really sweet moment, and I remember looking at, because I wanted to be a psychologist, and because my dad was a psychologist, and I've always been interested in people, and I remember looking at her going, I want to help good people become great people. And that was like my life's mission crystallized into like one sentence.
Yeah.
But I didn't really see how that could play out. And so there was a lot of like wandering, of like, and honestly, just a lot of like self-improvement along the way. Trying to figure out these lessons for myself, right? And I think that's the way that it always happens for everyone. It's like, if you're a marketer, you're usually trying to sell your own stuff, trying to figure out how to do it. And so, yeah, it was just a lot. It was a lot of that. And it was always in me, this passion to like empower people to step up into like greater versions of themselves. And along the path, me doing it for myself. And the transition, though, honestly, that there really hasn't ever been much of a transition. I've always been doing this, whether it was in like Catherine's business, like we, as like a branding director, it was all about like, okay, how can we help these customers and clients and these people that we love, like our community, the tribe that we built, how can we help them take the next step along the path? And a lot of these concepts that we're talking about are talked about in different words within Catherine's stuff, and so honestly, there never really was a transition. Like, it's just taken different forms. And I think that's what's beautiful when you really start like understanding your identity. Like when I'm with my daughter playing in her room, like I'm doing the same thing. When I'm like working with Catherine on branding her company, I'm doing the same thing. When I'm like doing coaching calls with my clients, I'm doing the same thing. So there's never really been a transition. It's just been my capacity has improved along the way to be able to help people in different platforms in different ways. But it's always been about helping good people become great people. And it just, what form does it take, right?
Yeah, I love it. Whew. Oh man. Okay. We're gonna have to set it up for part 2 at some point in the future. Saying, what is, Paul? What is like something that people can do today, right? Like if they're in that position, maybe they're a little overwhelmed, they're facing that chaos. Like we mentioned, stopping, taking a second, journaling. Like what is something, if you want to harp on that a little bit, but what is one action point that they can execute today to move forward and continue to create, that momentum or that impact,
or that sovereignty.
Oh, that's sovereignty.
Ah,
You,
there
you
you
nailed
go.
it. Yes, you nailed it. Let's go.
Yeah. You know, I want to make sure that this is like accurate, because there's like really like quippy things that I could say, but something that's like broad and overarching for everyone. I really believe that when you understand who you are, like your identity, the other principles, it may still be a struggle to arrive there, but you at least have a standard. You have a stake in the ground or an anchor in the sea to be able to say, like, that's who I am. And so you can constantly ask yourself, am I acting like Paul? Or am I acting like a shadow version of himself? Right? But it's crystallizing that identity and saying, essentially, again, like, what are my rules or agreements with myself? Am I the kind of man that blows up at his wife? Yes or no? No, right?
Yeah,
am I the kind of man that makes business decisions from a place of fear? Am I the type of man that that shrinks from a moment of boldness? And like asking yourself questions like that and getting really clear on who you are. In fact, there was a period of like 2 months, I think it was, where every day I took 5 minutes to get really clear on who I was. And so sometimes that was the question I'd ask myself is like, what does Paul look like in 10 or 5 years? I called him the $100 million man.
yeah.
And so it's like, but like genuinely, like, how does a person at that level operate? And like, I didn't know. And so I just had to start creating it. Right.
Yeah.
And so it would be as vivid as this. I would even say, like, what kind of adventure would he go on when he had like a whole day to himself? And I like really clearly like talk it out, and I'd be like, well, that man has his helicopter's pilot license, and he would fly his family up to Alaska, and they'd find this rad mountain to go camping on. Right? Like, that's the kind of, like, I would just like start talking about. And so it's like, okay, like, who does he have to be in order to take that? Well, he probably has to like get really clear about his business operations. He has to get really clear about his relationship with his children and letting them be like bold enough and teaching them how to have adventures like that. Yeah. Or another one was like, if I'm sitting down with a client as Paul in 10 years, what would it look like to have that conversation? Well, that man would probably be extremely empathetic, but extremely like, he's willing to like call their bluff. He's willing to like, so it's like you start getting really clear about like, what does that look like? And then I took all of that like stuff that was like really exciting and fun and started distilling it down into very specific statements. Like I have them written over on my desk over here. Like, I'm a leader, I'm a creator, I'm relentless, I'm badass, I'm a powerful man, I'm a king. Like, that's who Paul is, right? Mm-hmm. And so in moments where I'm like, the chaos is coming, it's like, okay, well, am I acting like a leader right now? Am I acting like a creator right now? Am I acting badass? Am I acting like a king? Yes or no, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like giving yourself something to hold on to in those moments where it's like, am I aligned or oriented towards the right direction?
Yeah. Cool. I love it. It's kind of like having your own, I forgot the name of it. In Spanish, it's called brújula.
Compass.
Yeah, it's kind of like your own life compass, right? Like every time a situation comes out, you pull it out, and now you have all your values, right? Your identity. And you're like, yep, are we aligned or not? That's amazing. I love it. I'm definitely going to have to do that exercise. I actually did a sort of an exercise like that the other day. I shared it with my brother, but this conversation has made me realize that I need to go a little bit deeper.
Yes.
And a little bit more consistent on how often I revise it, for sure.
I just typed something on my notes here. I'm like at the very top, re-listen multiple times, because Paul, what you brought to the table today was incredible. Like, I think everybody in this entrepreneurship journey needs to listen to this information, right? Like, and at whatever level you are, because you know there's always some lessons there, and I want to sit down very and distill, like you said, right? Like
Very
distill
intentionally.
very intentionally, and create an action plan, right? Like, because this incredible thing about connecting with wonderful people like you, man. Like, we, every time we have these conversations, our mind is first blown, and then we collect that chaos and we adapt, and we do our best to execute. But I encourage everybody listening, right? I appreciate everybody listening, staying this long, and go back, right? And with a pen and paper, and it's like, now that I listened and consumed and understood, how am I going to take action in my next, month, my next 2 months, 60 days, reassess, continue to go there.
Yeah, I think this is such an important conversation for anybody that goes into entrepreneurship, honestly. Like, going into entrepreneurship is opening the doors of chaos.
No, you're 100% right.
Bring it on.
That's so generous of you guys to say. Thank you so much. That was
absolutely.
It was a super fun conversation for me.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's what's important, man. Thank you for sharing what you're passionate about, and being loud about it. And that leads me to our last question. And again, last question for today, because we're going to do a part 2 at some point. For sure.
Awesome. I love it.
We're going to hunt you down. Where will you be if you did not start publishing? Like, I know, like, personally, maybe you started that journey like not so long ago, but also like in general with like your journey. I know with Catherine, you guys are all over the place. She's very loud with her movement, right? Where, like, will you be personally, or like, if you want to take it on a more general level, like, where will you guys be if you did not start publishing?
I got 2 answers for you. One, I think, is like the like obvious, where it's like, nobody will hear you, nobody will see you if you don't say anything, right? It's like going to a party and sitting in the corner. It's like, no, you're not engaged in the party. Yeah. But secondly, I think there's something really powerful about speaking, is it forces you to get clear. Because I think, especially when, especially like leaders of movements and people who are bringing something unique to the market, it's usually something that's innate in you. It's something that like comes naturally, and it's like, oh, everybody knows this, right? But, well, one, everybody doesn't know it, but 2, that because it's so innate in you, it's really hard to articulate. It's really hard to get out of you. And so for me, what publishing forced me to do, because this was like a really messy journey to get to this place, and especially when you're like dealing with your own head, it's like, well, I don't know how to like quantify that or put that in order or sequence it out. And so it forced me to say, like, what actually is your message? What actually are you saying? What actually are these frameworks? What are these ideas? And so it forced me to like crystallize that and get really, really clear about what I actually am saying. And so I think like publishing forces you to do 2 things. It forces you to like be heard and be seen, and like actually have something to sell, and like it lets that happen. But it also forces you to get really, really clear and really, really systematic almost about what it is you're even doing.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
Again, we repeat it every time we hear these answers. We do this for ourselves to keep going and continue to do it. Publishing has changed everything for us. And I hope it does. Like, if you're listening right now, I think that's the first step. If you are not publishing, go ahead. Like, test your message, test your ideas. Like Paul, like, he tested his one, idea here, and it resonated, and I'm sure he's going to share it again later. And that's what happened with us yesterday too, with a couple of concepts. And it's a fun journey, man. Like, when we change perspective around publishing, and after that, it just becomes super incredible and fun, and we grow in like internally and externally as well. So, dude, thank you, Paul. How can people find you? How can people connect with you if they want to learn more about you, about your programs, about working with you?
Yeah. So you can go to my website, paulvanbloem.com, or lawlessstudios.com. Or you can follow me on Instagram. That's where I publish most, at Paul Van Bloem. Or you can find me on Facebook, post there as well.
Sweet. We're going to leave all those links right in the description. All you got to do is scroll down, click in there, connect, and have these amazing conversations.
Yeah. And I encourage you guys to go connect with Paul and go and conquer your own sovereignty. Look at that. Look at that.
You nailed it. checked 30 times.
I had to check. I'm checking. You know,
Sovereignty.
when you look a word on the dictionary at the bottom says how it's pronounced. I'm reading that part.
Yeah. Paul, if you have an influx of inbox and comments, that's definitely us. Just saying, I'm just gonna put it out there. And with that said, guys, thank you so much for tuning into the Content is Profit podcast. Go ahead and subscribe. Smash that subscribe button and follow us on social media at BizBrosCo.
That is right. And if you find this episode impactful, which I am sure you did because Paul was incredible, please don't forget to share it and leave a 5-star review. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.